Hi and welcome to another episode of Love Seitan's Challenge Rachel. This time it's a spaghetti bolognese. When I made the chili, I planned on doing this at the same time but ended up with not nearly enough mushrooms. So I've been out, bought a load more, waited a couple of weeks, and here we are. So I'm going to use these ones. This is kind of a pepperoni flavour, so that's going to have lots of nice flavours and spices, and then this is just a sort of plain seitan. To kick things off, I'm going to chop up some onions. I've got one white onion and two little reds that were lurking in the back of the veg drawer. I've got about a tablespoon or so of oil in the pan, ready to go. And again, same as the chili, just quite a thick chop on all of this. And do feel free to chop these as small or as large as you like. 6 stalks of celery. Now it isn't, just look how skinny they are. Use as much celery or as little as you like. It does give a really nice flavour to the pasta sauce. Normally when I make a spaghetti sauce, I make a sofrito, so onion, celery and carrots. I'm not going to do carrots in this one, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. I've had an idea. So I'm going to grate down these seitan rods. A tip for when you're grating these is to leave the plastic on, just to give it a bit of extra support, and then pull it back as you progress. Keep an eye on the veg, make sure nothing catches. These bits that are a bit unmanageable I'm going to graze through without mangling your fingers, just chop those by hand. Put some light on so it's a bit easier to see in the pan. Do feel free to grate the seitan in your food processor if you've got one, on the grating disc, but I just think on mine, I'm just going to mush it rather than grate it. Once the veg is at this stage, where the onions have gone translucent, I'm going to put in 300 grams of sliced white mushrooms. I've fried the onions and celery on 7, and I've dropped it down to 6 now that the mushrooms are in there. As the mushrooms start cooking down and softening, you see them glistening as they release all their moisture. So just going to keep cooking that down. You can also do that separately in the oven if you like. I'm going to chop through these last ungrated bits. I'm going to leave it around that size because I think it'd be quite nice to have some bigger bits as I'm chewing it. I'm going to chop those herbs that we picked. So I've got the marjoram. That's what it looks like. Quite a soft, delicate but powerfully scented herb. And basil. Good old basil. And then a bit of the thyme. I'm going to do stems and everything because I quite like it, but do feel free to go through and pull the leaves off if you want to. Bunch everything together. I've still got a colossal amount of garlic, so I'm going to chuck in 9 cloves again, same as the chili, but you don't need to do that many if you don't like garlic as much as I do. Cook the garlic out for a minute or so. After the garlic's cooked down for a couple of minutes, you'll know when it's right because it won't smell as intensely garlicky. I'm pouring in a good splash of port. Maybe 50 mils, 100 mils, however much you like. I'm going to finish the bottom now. I've used port, but you can certainly use red wine as well. That's not a problem. And just use the liquid to get those stuck on bits off the bottom. So that's got tons of extra flavour in. This is called deglazing. Just let that bubble away and it'll burn a lot of the alcohol off. This isn't going to be alcohol free, so do be cautious if you're cooking for somebody who doesn't want any alcohol. Give that a minute or so, a couple of minutes. Most of the liquid's gone again. We're here. Dropping the heat down to 5 now because I just want a sort of gentle heat under there. And it's time to start adding in some bulk. These are roast mushrooms that I did exactly the same as I did for the chili. That's 1200 grams of white mushrooms. So watch the chili video if you want the flavouring ingredients. And then this is carrots that I did in a very similar process to the mushrooms. I had a bag of carrots. I think it was a kilo bag, maybe 1.5 kilos. And they'd started going black on the ends. So I was trying to rack my brain what to do with it. And then I was on YouTube this morning looking how to pollinate the tomato plants, and I saw a thumbnail from Sauce Stash that said making ground meat from carrots, and I haven't watched the video, but seeing that kind of thought, oh, maybe I can try doing that in the bolognese. So I grated down the carrots. I did a few on the coarse grate and a couple on the really fine grate. Roasted them down with celery, salt and black pepper. I then added in some extra flavour ingredients. My bottle of tamarind paste was kind of at its end, but I could see the inside was really thick and coated with it. I brewed up some Lapsang tea and poured that into the bottle, swilled it out, poured that over the carrots. I also put in a little bit of Marmite, so they've got a really lovely meaty kind of flavour. So in goes the mushrooms and the carrots, and then the seitan. Stir everything together. If you want even more protein in there, you could put in some cooked pui lentils, or any kind of bean or pulse would work really well. I'm going to do a can of tomatoes. I think I'm probably going to do 2 in this one, because that is a considerable amount of dry stuff. We'll do the soy milk trick again. In case you haven't seen the chili video, soy milk, when you combine it with an acid, like tomatoes, goes lovely and thick. About 1/3 of a can. Give it a good swilling. And just get all that really thick, lovely stuff off the sides. Pour it in. Same with the other one. Good 2 or 3 tablespoons of tomato puree and those herbs. So there's probably 10-15 grams of fresh herbs. It'll be a really good stir to combine everything. I'm going to add a can of boiling water.
To see the full Love Seitan range and get 10% off your first order, head to loveseitan.com and use code chaotic10.
I'm going to start heating up my water for the spaghetti. The way I do it is there was a load of salt in there, and I've got a tiny bit of water just so I can bring that up to heat while the kettle boils. I've no doubt people will criticise my spaghetti making the way I do it, but this is the way I found works best for batch cooking. It's the best way of heating it back up again the following day. Do it however you want. At this stage, check your flavourings and see how you feel about it. Because I put so many seasonings and flavourings on the carrots and mushrooms, it doesn't really need anything else, but do feel free to add whatever else you like in there. That's absolutely fine. And I've just remembered, so on the carrots, I did some dehydrated celery and some dehydrated roast mushrooms. It's kind of the steak flavourings that I'd made, and thought, oh, I'll chuck a bit of those on and see what that's like. But do feel free to use the same ingredients that you use for the mushrooms. You can put those on the carrots as well. Once the spaghetti water is at a rolling boil, you slam your spaghetti down, hold it firmly, but watch your hands on the sides especially. Dump it in. I like using whole grain spelt spaghetti because it's just got a really nice flavour and texture to it. And the strands are a little bit rough, so I find, anything you put on it kind of clings to it very nicely. Use a spoon, catch the ends of it, and push it under the water. Probably, leave it sit for about 30 seconds just to let it start softening. If you look on the packet, it will tell you what cooking time. So I set my timer to 9 and then start trying it. And it's usually done about 10 minutes because you do want it slightly firm. Once it starts softening, move it around because otherwise the strands will stick together. It just forms a solid clump that's really unpleasant. I've set my strainer over a bowl because I want to collect some of that starchy water to then add back into the sauce. I had to put a light on. It's been a while since I've had to have a light on. So yeah, for cooking at 8 p.m. Because I'm doing this as a batch cook, same as I did with the chili, I'm keeping the amount of liquid in the sauce to a minimum, just so it doesn't take up room in the freezer. And then when I come to eating it, I'll just put in some more water, or maybe a bit more soy milk, or I don't know, some gravy or something. I don't know, anything just to make it a bit wetter. But there's so much flavour in here, I think water will be fine. I've just remembered, my tomato ketchup is more or less done. So I'm going to swill out the bottle with some soy milk. And then that's left a bit of a coating, so just give it another rinse. Grab a piece of pasta. Got slight resistance to it, but that's gonna, because I'm reheating it the next day, it will soften up a little bit more. They say if you throw a piece of spaghetti at the wall and it sticks, it's done. So let's try it. Yay! I'm trying to do it somewhat carefully because there's that bowl underneath. Give it a shake, just to get as much excess water as you can off, and then back into the pan. And then to make sure it doesn't stick, clump together once it's cold, olive oil. A really liberal dose of olive oil. Fork that through. Pick it up, move it around. sure every strand is coated. And as I say, that just prevents sticking, because if you don't, it will just kind of cake up overnight. If you're making it fresh every time, then you don't need to do this. And put the lid back on, that part is important. Almost time to eat. I'm going to show you a little trick to get your spaghetti looking snazzy. It involves a meat fork. This is one of the only uses this meat fork gets these days. Run through it to loosen it up a little bit. And then you want to spear some. And then twist it. Just lift it and twist. And lay it on the plate. And then feel free to neaten it up. You can spend more time if you want, make it super neat and tidy. But I'm starving and I need to sit down. Get stuck into this. The roast mushrooms and carrots have worked perfectly for texture. They really do mimic ground beef. And the herbs are there, bringing a lovely aromatic. There's lots of complexity and layers. The seitan is there. The pepperoni had some chili in there, so there's a very subtle kind of zing, which is really delicious. And the texture's just amazing. So you can feel the difference between the carrots and then the mushrooms and then the seitan. All works really beautifully together. Hit subscribe and tap the bell icon. I'll fill your inbox so you can fill your freezer.